Amud Beis 13b, and we are picking up at the Tana Rabbanan. Beautiful sugya. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 lines up from the bottom. Tana Rabbanan. So just remember again the context, or the subject we're talking about over here is shtuye yayin. So we already began to speak about yesterday. A Kohen, of course, is not permitted to enter into the Beis Hamikdash and do the avodah while under the influence. We saw machlokes as to what exactly under the influence means. What kind of wine? Not really how much wine. That already we saw. It's at least the revius. What about sharmidei mashkin? What about other intoxicating beverages? So we saw all of that yesterday. Now, Rabbi said we're going to expand this discussion here beyond avoda as well. So Tana Rabbanan, ulahavdil bin hakodesh ubin hachol. So we'll say, so the pasuk says right after the Torah hands down the prohibition of yayin v'sheicher al teisht ata uvanecha v'itach bevoachem el oal moed v'lo samusu. So after the Torah gives us the prohibition of shtuye yayin vis-a-vis the kohanim, the Torah then goes on to say ulahavdil bin hakodesh ubin hachol ben atami ben atar ulahoros es bnei Yisrael kol hachukim asher diber Hashem aleihem biad Moshe. So the Gemara understands this to mean that this is expanding the list of prohibited activities which Kohanim and others are not permitted to do while under the influence. So Tana Rabbanan ula havdu ben hakodesh ben hachol elu damin erchin charamin vehekdeshos. So what the havdu ben hakodesh ben hachol teaches me, damin means monetary valuations, erchin means erech vows, charamin are cherem vows, and ekdeshos. But say ekdeshos presumably refers to someone who wants to redeem something from the Beis Hamikdash. The common denominator amongst all of these things is these are valuations, right? These are things in which a Beis Din has to get together and value, right? Appraise the item. So the Gemara is saying over here, that's what? That once you drank wine, you are not permitted to engage in the process of valuations. What's the concern? The concern is that your judgment is impaired. Next, beina tamei ubeina tahar. What does it mean between the tamei and the tahar? Elu tameus taras. Both say this refers to the halachos of tumen tara. Can't paskin on tumen tara once you drank. Ulahoros zuhora. So we'll say can't paskin halacha. Can't paskin halacha once you drank. Next, eskala chukim. What does it mean all the chukim? Elu midrashos. I will say this refers to the study or to the teaching of medrash. Now the medrash that they're referring to over here, of course, is medrash halacha. One can't do that. Next, asher diber Hashem zu halacha. This is the first halacha. Biad Moshe ze Talmud. Biad Moshe means you can't teach Gemara either while under the influence. Yacha af ha-mishnah. So you might have thought again that halacha l'maisa, this applies to Mishnah as well, that you can't teach Mishnah. Talmud lomar ulahoros. Therefore, the pasuk says lahoros. So we'll say lahoros teaches me what? That it's only matters which are associated with psak. Mishnah is not associated with psak, right? People don't learn Mishnah. So people don't learn halacha from Mishnah, and therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, there's no problem with teaching it while under the influence. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Yachal af Talmud. Rabbi Yehuda says you might have thought that you can't teach Gemara after you drank wine. Talmud lomar ulahoros. Therefore, the pasuk says lahoros. We'll say lahoros teaches me that it is only things which have psak halacha in it. Obviously, Gemara doesn't have, or at least explicit psak halacha in it. Nema, to which the Gemara says, Kiman azlaha desanya. But say whose opinion is reflected in the following brisa? Yatsa sheretz tamei utzvardei atar sheshtuye yain morin bahen. So to which the sheshtuye yain morin bahen. Horas. Well, listen to this. Excluded from this list are halachas like that a sheretz is tamei, that a tzvardei is tahar, that even someone who drank wine is permitted to teach these subjects. So what this seems to be saying over here is as follows. That's something that is a straightforward halacha, that doesn't have hora, that doesn't really have what's called psak halacha, or like really contemplation of law. Even a person who drank is permitted to teach this. Whose opinion is this? Nema, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Hudahi. Velo Rabbanon, to which the Gemara says no. Afilu Tema Rabbanon, V'shayni hacha. This case is different. Why? The Zion Kari Be Rafu. Because I will say this is something that you could learn explicitly in yeshiva. So we'll say, so bottom line, what the Gemara is saying over here is like this, that the halacha of shtuya yayin doesn't apply to something that is explicit and everyone knows. Everyone knows that a sheretz is tameh. Therefore, even if someone drank wine, halacha l'maisa, they'll still permitted to go ahead and teach that halacha. That's not called a hora. Amar Rav, so say Rav says halacha, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. But say good news, right? Rav says the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, that you could teach Gemara even after you drank wine. I was happy to read this, Baruch Hashem, right? You can teach Gemara even after you drank wine. I vaha Rav lo mokim amora miyamatav lechari. Remember again, going back to what we saw yesterday, but yet we just saw that what? That Rav, after he had the Yom Tov Su'udah, would give his amora the rest of the day off. Because after drinking wine, he would not teach. And Rav was giving a shir in Gemara. So why? What was the problem? To which the Gemara says, Rav lo moki amorim yom tov lachar mishum shichrus, shani Rav da'ori mori, v'nekum delo. So the Gemara says, shani Rav da'ori mori. So Rav is different. Why? Because Rav paskin halachas. Right? When Rav would give shir, he would paskin halachas. So even though it was a Gemara shir, he would say over halacha, and therefore again he did not want to give the shir after he drank wine. So the Gemara says, V'nekum delo lori. So ultimately, Rav, why don't you just be careful not to paskin halacha, or just give the shir, don't paskin halacha. Rav lo sagile below hora. Let's say Rav couldn't help himself, right? When Rav would go ahead and give a shir, just by definition, he would espouse what the halacha is. So we'll say, so bottom line, the Gemara seems to say, we pass like Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, which essentially means that you could teach any body of Torah you want as long as it is not related to a halacha l'maisa or valuations. That's what we're concerned about. In other words, that halacha l'maisa, once you're a bit impaired, we don't want you paskening halacha, and we don't want you engaging in valuations. Other things you can do. What about the study of Gemara? That itself is a machlokes, but it seems to be like Pasuk Rabbi Yossi who did that the study of Gemara ultimately is fine, or say the teaching of Gemara is fine, even under the influence. So both say, there happens to be a very interesting couple of halachas. So the Rambam in Hilchos Bias HaMikdash, this is Parak Aleph, writes as follows. Kol Kohen, so we'll say going back, because remember again, we spoke about Shtuya Yayin, so let's analyze this a little bit. Kol Kohen HaKosher LaAvoda, Im Shasa Yayin Astra Lo Hikanis Min HaMizbeach Lifnim. So we'll say any Kohen who drinks wine, right, ultimately again is not permitted to come into the Beis HaMikdash and do the Avoda. V'im nichnas v'avad avodaso, avodaso psul v'chay misdei shamayim. So we'll say if a Kohen does the avoda under the influence. Now there's a two-pronged isra over here. Number one is the isra of coming into the Beis HaMikdash while under the influence, and number two is doing the avoda. If he comes in and does the avoda, number one, the avoda is pasul. Number two, he is chayiv misa bidei shamayim. What kind of wine? A revius of wine, undiluted, in one lapse, in one, right, bebas achas, at once, and the wine must be at least 40 days old. So in order to be chayiv misa b'dei shamayim, revius, bebas achas, at once, from wine that is at least 40 days old. If you don't comply with any one of these details, then what's the halacha? Your pater and the avoda is good. So again, I will say, a Kohen goes ahead and drinks the wine, the revius, in 2 sips instead of 1, goes ahead and dilutes it a little bit. The wine is not 40 days old. Any one of the details missing, the avoda is okay, and he's not chayiv misa. However, again, the Rambam then goes on, if he drank more than a revius, then halacha l'maaseh, even if the other details were not adhered to, he will still be chayiv. And I will say, now this is actually interesting. What about, the next case in the Gemara was, what happens if the Kohen is intoxicated not from wine, or drank not wine, but other intoxicating beverages? So what's the halacha? The halacha is he is prohibited to enter into the Beis HaMikdash, but if he did so, ultimately again he gets malchus, it's aser, but if he did the avoda is kosher. See, interestingly enough, the prohibition of shtuya yayin is dafka a din in wine. Dafka din in wine. So even though he can't enter in and do the avoda intoxicated from other beverages, if he did so, he's not chayiv misa and the avoda is kosher. Next, so we'll say now. I just want to end off with this halacha. The Rambam writes, "Ukeshem she'asr lakoyin likanis lamikdash mipnei hashichrus kach asr lechol adam ben koyin ben Yisrael lahoros kishu shasui." But we'll say the same way that the Kohen cannot enter into the Beis Hamikdash and do the avodah in a state of inebriation, no Jew is permitted to go ahead and paskin halacha if he is inebriated. Now, we'll say here the halacha is different from a Kohen, because whereas by a Kohen, as you saw, the prohibition of shtuyei yayin only applies to wine, this halacha applies to any beverage, right? You fill in the blank, right? Any beverage which intoxicates ultimately, again, falls under this prohibition. Afilu achol tmarim o shasa chalav v'nishtabsha daito ma'at al yor. I will say, even remembering we saw the dvela ki'ilis, the figs from ki'ilis, which had an intoxicating effect. Maybe warm milk, I guess, which could have an intoxicating effect, right? Again, so the Rambam says, however, again, this of course doesn't apply to halachos mifurashos, right? If halacha is explicit, then halacha lamaisa, again, he could paskin, quote unquote, paskin that even under the influence. Well, so with this I'll end. The Rambam says in halacha dalid, umutar l'shikar lelamed Torah, afilu hilcho halachos midrashos v'hushlo yora. We'll say a shikar could teach Torah. Right? A shikar could teach Torah. By the way, this is not like a metaphor for becoming shikar with Torah. Right? This is like a shikar. Right? This is shikar through and through. Right? I'll say, so a shikar could teach Torah as long as what? As long as halacha l'meisa, he's not paskening halacha. V'im haya chacham kavua lahora lo yilamed shelimuda horahi. But this is actually very interesting. There's an exception to this rule. The exception to this rule is like if you're like a Rav, right? Meaning Rav in the Gemara, who apparently, again, I will say, great Talmidei Chachamim. So it's assumed that the statements they make are halachically declarative statements. So we'll say, so someone like Rav, and this is why Rav dismissed, this is why Rav gave his Amora the rest of the day off after the Yom Tov Suda, because Rav understood that when he said things in a shir, people took it as halacha l'maisa. So if a person is a Talmud Chacham of that caliber, where people take his stam statements as declarative halacha, he may not teach even halacha, even Gemara or even Mishnah in a state of inebriation. Good. Let's say fascinating sugya. Let's go weiter. Says the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah. Yesh ochel achila achas. We'll say we're now going to come to a series of Mishnayos where again we're going to see one act of consumption creates multiple liabilities. So a person could engage in one act of eating and yet be chayiv 4 chatos and 1 asham. What's the case? Tamei sha'achal chaylev. So we'll say if a person who's tamei eats chaylev, v'hayanosam min hamukdashin, and the chaylev itself was kodesh and became nosar, and he did this when? On Yom Kippur. Right? Busy day, right? All of this is happening on Yom Kippur. So if you look at the Rashi in the Mishnah, it's called about dalet chatos, chad mishum da'achal kodesh b'tumah. So we'll say 1 chatos is because you ate sacrificial, or I should say sanctified items in a state of tumah. Chad mishum chaylev, 1 because of chaylev. Chad mishum nosar, v'chad mishum Yom Kippurim. What's the asham for? The asham ultimately, again, I will say, is for me'ilah, misappropriation, ultimately, again, of sanctified items. Rabbi Meir Omer, im haya Shabbos v'otziu chayiv. Rabbi Meir says, by the way, let's go ahead and add on another. If it happened to be Shabbos, and he went ahead and he carried it. Right? By the way, now the case of carrying this could easily be where he's eating it, it's in his mouth, and he walks out. That's also called carrying. So ultimately, again, that's another isser. So Amrulo, they say back to Rabbi Meir, no, Enom and Hashem. No, what we're looking for, Abosai, is what? We're looking for the act of consumption itself generates multiple liabilities. It's true, if it's Shabbos and he carries it out, ultimately, again, he's chai for Shabbos also, but that's not related to the act of eating. That's a separate, independent isser. Top of Yud Daled. Neima Isra Rabbi Meir Isser Chalal Isser. So we'll say, you see from here that Rabbi Meir holds that one isser is chal on another isser, to which the Gemara says, no. Nehi the Isser Chal al Isser Lesle. The truth is, even if you hold that Rabbi Meir holds that Ein Isser Chal al Isser, right? So we've spoken about this concept extensively, that once something is prohibited, so no other prohibitions could devolve upon that prohibited item. Nevertheless, Isser Kolal vi Isser Mosif Isser. So we've seen this before, that Halacha L'maisa, even if you hold Ein Isser Chalal Isser, right? Once something is prohibited, another layer of prohibition cannot devolve upon that already prohibited item. If the second Isser is more expansive or more inclusive than the first, then ultimately, again, that second Isser can devolve upon the first. So the Gemara is going to explain this. Look at Rashi for just a moment. Tap Rashi, the Isser Greda Chalal Isser Lesle, Kigona Ochal Nevelas Pema Tmeya, Enu Chaim Mishum Nevela, Dahainu Isser Greda. So we'll say, so an example of Ein Isser Chalal Isser would be like this. If you have a Behemoth Tmeya, you have a Chazer, and the Chazer dies, and now you eat the Chazer, so we'll say, you might say, well, I should be Chayiv twice. Once for Behemoth Tmeya, and what? Once for Nevela. So we'll say, if you hold Isser Chalal Isser, then yes, that would be true. If you hold Ein Isser Chalal Isser, that would not be true. But even if you hold Ein Isser Chalal Isser, that's only with what? Like Isurim. But if the second Isser is more expansive or more inclusive than the first, then everyone would agree that that second Isser devolves on the first. We'll explain this. Kigon. So the Gemara says, I'm sorry. So Isser called Isser Mosif Islay. So for example, Tar Mei Kara. So we'll say if an animal was tar from the beginning, Lo Aser Ella Bechelev. So we'll say, remember, you have a totally regular kosher tar animal. So we'll say the only part of that animal that is Aser is the Chelev. Sahavile Tameh. So we'll say now ultimately again, if the individual becomes tamei, migo da asr bechatichos toros, since Rabbi say a tamei is prohibited from taking part of the other sacrificial parts of the animal. So the Gemara says, itosif be nami isura iluye chelev. He develops another isra vis-a-vis the chelev also. Suppose to see what's happening over here. If I become tamei, although the chelev was already asr to me, but now as a result of my tumah, I become asr onto all the other pieces of the animal as well. So we'll say that's an isra mosif. Therefore, once that happens, the isra tumah devolves upon the chelev as well. The chelev ne'ikara, lo asr ela ba'achila. Furthermore, again, chelev itself, Rabbi says, is only asr ba'achila. Akdishay, once you consecrate it, migo di itosif be'isur da'ana, it now becomes asr ba'ana. The Gemara says, itosif be'legabe chelev. So we'll say, now once you're makdish an animal, since now the animal itself becomes asr ba'ana, that isur hana now devolves upon the chelev as well. V'akati lehedyot hu da'asr. Now we'll say, now the truth is, up until now, it's only asr to a person. Aval legavo ashari. Now we'll say, ultimately, again, it's permitted on the mizbeach. Havile nosar. Then I will say, if it subsequently becomes nosar, what happens? Migo di tosif isur legabi gavoa. Since I will say the prohibition of nosar applies even to the mizbeach, itosif bei legabe hedyot. It devolves upon the individual as well. Chalala Yom Kippurim. But I'll say once Yom Kippur comes along, migo di tosif bei isur legabe chulin. Since Yom Kippur prohibits even non-consecrated items, even chulin. Therefore, what? Itosif bei legabe gavoa. There's an additional isur that devolves upon consecrated items as well. So we'll say, so therefore, again, the Gemara explains that this whole construct of the Mishnah, even if you hold ein isur chal al isur, right, which apparently Rabbi Meir and others do, the case in the Mishnah would still work. Why? Because the secondary, or I should say, each level of additional isur is what we call an isur mosif, where the second isur is coming to include more than the first one did. In that case, even if you hold ein isur chalal isur, ultimately, again, you will say an isur mosif will be chal on the isur. I vinisni hey chatos, but I don't understand, why don't you set it up? I could give you, the Mishnah only made you chayiv for 4 chatos. Why don't we say that you're chayiv for 5 chatos? And I'll tell you how. V'nukma kigon da'achal kizayis pigel. We'll say, why don't you set it up like this? Say that I'm eating 2, right? I'm eating 2 kizaysim. Or I should say, let me say it a little differently. Say that in addition to what I'm doing, I'm going ahead and eating a kizayis of pigel. And therefore, I will say again, there should be another chatas for pigel consumption. To which the one says, no. Bechad behema kamairi, b'shtei behemos lo kamairi. To which the Gemara says, in order to set it up as a case of pigul, that kizayis must have been coming from where? From another animal. We only want to set this up as a case of dealing with one animal, not two animals. So Gemara says, I don't understand why you say that. V'nosar upigol bechad. Well, I should say this is a statement. V'nosar upigol bechad debehema lo mishkach asla. Both of this is actually very interesting because ultimately, again, you can't have a case of nosar and pigol in the same animal. The both saying this is actually quite interesting. Why not? Listen to this. Remember, how does an animal become pigol? Pigol means the Kohen had a disqualifying thought in one of the blood avodos, right? One of the initial avodos of the carbon. What happens when he has that inappropriate thought? What happens? It disqualifies the carbon. We'll say no sar means what? The carbon was prohibited. Was permitted. It was a good carbon, and you left it past its permitted window. Something that is pigul can never become no sar, because once it's pigul, it's done. It's done, and pigul occurs already again at the earliest stages of avoda. So the Gemara is suggesting, why don't you say over here that you should be chayiv ultimately again for pigul also? Well, again, there's no such case of pigul and no sar in the same kizayis. So it must be that's what you're suggesting over here, that he ate a second kizayis of pigul. No, we don't want to set up the case like that. We only want to set up the case of one act of consumption. If you look at Rashi for just a moment, b'shtei behemos lo mayri, v'nosar pigul b'chad behemo leka, the pigul eino ela b'dalet avodo shaldam. Remember again, pigul occurs, we'll say when? In one of the initial 4 blood avodos. Hilchach mid the pigla lo chazya lachilas adam, v'lo lachilas mizbeach. Hilchach lo chayil aleinos. It's such an obvious point, but you don't think about this, that ultimately, again, pigul prevents the carbon from ever really actualizing. No sir is the result of a carbon that has actualized and stayed past its permitted window of consumption. To which the Gemara says, Alam alo, I don't understand. I could set up a case of pigul and osir on the same animal, and I'll tell you how. Mashkachas law is actually very interesting. Kigon shehe'ela ever pigul legabi mizbeach. Both listen to this. What happens if you took a limb that was pigul? You took a limb that was pigul, and what happens? You put it on the mizbeach anyway. Fascinating halacha. Depaka pigule mine. But apparently the halacha is that ultimately, again, if you take a limb that is pigul and you put it on the mizbeach, its pigul status disappears. Look at Rashi just a moment. Depaka mimeno pigulo dekadshe mizbeach ba'avoda. Ultimately, again, the mizbeach itself consecrates the limb through avoda. So both say, so listen to this. V'havile nosar, and therefore again you could go ahead and it could become nosar. So both say, if that's true, that when you put a limb on the mizbeach, the pigul status goes away, then it can become nosar. So you could have a situation of both say of what? Of pigul and nosar. To which the Gemara says, no. Mishum depaka pigula mine v'havile nosar. Ultimately, again, both say, here's the difference. The difference is once you do that, what occurs? The pigul status is gone, and then ultimately, if left past its permitted window of consumption, becomes nosar. But at no point in time, what? Is it both pigul and nosar? Ukita amra ula, as Ula said, komet pigul shehela legabi mizbeach. Well, say if ultimately, again, you took a kometz of pigul, right? In other words, we'll say you took a kometz of mincha that had become pigul, and what happens? And you put it on the mizbeach. Paka pigula mimeno v'havile nosar. So the act of taking something that is pigul and putting it on the mizbeach causes the pigul status to go away, and then if left past its permitted window of consumption, it becomes nosar. But at no point in time is it pigul and nosar at the same time. To which the Gemara says, I'll tell you the case. To which the Gemara says, I'm sorry. I lost the place. V'havile nosar. Be'ever echad kamairi, v'lo b'shnei ivarim lo kamairi. But say therefore again, the only way you'd be able to set this up would be as if you had 2 limbs, right? 1 limb of pigul or 1 limb of nosar, and that's not how we're setting up the case of the Mishnah. The case of the Mishnah ultimately is set up as harabosai, as a case of 1 limb and not 2 limbs. But 1 second. Is that true? That you can't find the case of 1 limb that is both pigul and nosar? Listen to this. Allah, why not? Listen to the following case. Very interesting. Mashkachas la kigon shehela ever pigul legabi mizbeach The palge anchel gab mizbeach, upalge me'avroi de mizbeach. Moshe, listen to this great case. I could tell you a situation. I take a limb that is pigul and I put it on the mizbeach. Part of the limb is on the mizbeach. Part of the limb is dangling off the mizbeach. So what's the status of that limb? What I would say is as follows: the palge anchel is a palge me'avroi mizbeach. Tahu de mizbeach paka pigul. So I would say the part of the limb that is resting on the mizbeach should, right, this pigul status is removed, it evaporates, and therefore again that part of the limb that sits on the mizbeach, that could become nosar. V'havadei nosar, and ultimately again we'll say the part that dangles over, right, is what? Is pigul. So you can have pigul and nosar in one limb. To which the Gemara says, no, you can. Kida Amar Ula, I'll tell you why. Chometz pigul shela ala mizbeach. If you took a chometz of the mincha that was pigul and you put it on the mizbeach, paka pigula mimenu. The pigul status ultimately again evaporates. Vahavile nosar, and ultimately what? It becomes nosar. Amar le lo iruba de mizbeach shaje de mizbeach ruba de broi shaje le broi. To which the Gemara will say, that case of where part of the limb is on, part of the limb is off, it's very simple. We judge the limb by what? By where the majority of the limb is to be found. If the majority of the limb is on the mizbeach, even if part of it is dangling off, that is considered to be a limb on the mizbeach, and therefore again the pigul status in its totality is gone. If the majority of the limb is dangling off, then ultimately again that is a pigul limb. Tiv shot de Bayrami Bar Chama. Suppose I could now at least we could answer a question of Rabbi Bar Chama. Halchu be'ivarim achar harov olov. So Rabbi Bar Chama had asked that in general, when it comes to limbs on the mizbeach, do we judge the limbs by the majority placement or not? And from argument right over here, there seems to be clear that the answer to that is yes. If the majority of the limb is on the mizbeach, then it's considered on. If the majority is off, then it's considered off. The nafkamina rabose will be in this case of pigul. If you have a limb that's pigul, if the majority is on the mizbeach, then ultimately again the pigul status evaporates. If the majority is off, then the pigul status remains. Ella bekazais echad kamairi b'shnei kazaisim lo kamairi. So we'll say therefore again halacha l'maisa. The Gemara says as much as you try to come up with a case of where ultimately the person would be chayiv a fifth chatas for the consumption ultimately of pigul, you can't find it, right? You can't find it, right? You can't find pigul and nosar in the same kizayis. Velo, is that true? V'hakatani yom kippurim. But 1 second, let's analyze this for just a second. The Mishnah said that one of the chatas offerings that I'm going to bring is for what? Is ultimately again for Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, ubi Yom Kippurim, koseves te mechayev. But if Yom Kippur, the amount you eat in order to be chayev karis is kikoseves gasa, the size of a large date. And how large is a large date? The v'koseves ispe shnei zeisim. I will say koseves is approximately the size of 2 kizesim. Now remember again, if you eat any amount on Yom Kippur, it is aser and you're chayiv, but you're only chayiv misa, right, to kares, if you eat koseves. Now koseves is 2 kizesim. So let's analyze this for just a moment. The Gemara says, I will say now, understand what happened over here, is the Gemara wanted to say, right, we had a case in the Mishnah. The Mishnah said there's a situation where you eat one thing, and you can be chayiv for it 4 chatos and 1 asham. The Gemara wanted to suggest, why not say 5 chatos and add in a prohibition of pigul? To which the Gemara essentially showed that what? You can't be chayev for pigul in the same kizayis as nosar. So the only way to make you chayev for pigul is how? Is if you ate the second kizayis. To which the Gemara says, okay, it's true, but that's not how we want to set up the case of the Mishnah. Okay, the way we want to set up the Mishnah is consumption of 1 kizayis. To which the Gemara says, well, 1 second. One of the chatos for which you are chayiv for in the Mishnah is because it was Yom Kippur. Now remember, Rabbi said, when do you bring a chatos? If you did something inadvertently that had you done it intentionally, what? What if a chiyav misa? The only time in Yom Kippur that there's a chiyav misa for consumption is when? Is it's koseves. If it's koseves, and how much is that? Shtei zeisim. Oh, so 1 second. that means we are dealing with the case of Shnei Kizesim. So what's happening over here? Rabbi Zera, Kigon Sha'achal Kulya Bechelba. Rabbi Zera, what's the case? So we're saying the case we're dealing with is, for example, if a person ate the kulya, right? The kulya is the kidneys together with its chelev, together with its fats. Look at Rashi for just a moment. Kigon sha'achal kulya bechelba, v'nafshecha lomar lichayiv akulya mishum pigol, v'achal mishum nosra lo matzil meimar, hachi ditami sha'achal katani v'chelev atzmo bailok me'afar. So then what's the case? The case is where a person ate the kidney together with its fat. So that's considered to be one unit, but that inachinami together, it has two kizesim. Rav Papa Amar Kigon the Malya Batamri. Rav Papa says, no. What's the case? The case is where halacha l'maisa, you ate a kizayis of the sacrificial meat, and you filled up the rest of the kizayis to get to koseves with actual pieces of date. In other words, so therefore again, halacha l'maisa, it wasn't additional sacrificial meat that you added for the koseves, but rather again, he gives the example of dates. It was some other non-sacrificial matter. Therefore again, it works for Yom Kippur, but won't work for Pigul. Rav Papa, I was thinking, for Rav Adabar Acha Masni Heichatos, so we'll say Rav Adabar Acha, in his version of the Mishnah, he had that a person could eat one act of consumption and be chayiv for 5 chatos, not 4 like the Mishnah. So we'll say, where does the 5th one come from? Umetaris they could go in the achal kizayis pigul. So I'll say ultimately, v'lo meshani kani shinui dikama shaninan. So I'll say ultimately again, it's interesting. Apparently in Rav Adabar Acha's version of the Mishnah, he added that a person could eat 1 kizayis and what? Be chayiv ultimately again for 5 chatos. Where does he get the 5th chatos from? It's a case where he also consumed pigul. What's what does he also consumed pigul? He also consumed a second kizayis of pigul. So we'll say, so there is a version of the Mishnah which reads this as 5 chatos, and a person is consuming 2 kizesim. One that triggers the first 4 prohibitions, and the second one which is pigul. To which the Gemara says, "V'nisni sheish chatos." So if that's the case, why don't you make it 6? Right? Let's make it 6 chatos. And what's the case? V'nukma kigom da'achal kizayis dam. So I'll say, so why don't you say like this? In other words, if you're already adding on, so why don't you say a person could eat 3 kizesim, right, and be chayiv for 6 chatos. Why? 1 kizayis is nosar, 2nd kizayis is pigul, 3rd kizayis is dam. Right? And by the way, I will say, keep going on and on and on and on. Add a kizayis every single isser. To which the Gemara says, no. To which the Gemara says, Bechad achila kamari, b'shti achilos lo kamari. I will say the Mishnah wants to speak about a situation of where you could ingest the food items at once. 1 act of achila. With multiple acts of achila, we're not talking about. V'shiru chachamim de'in beis habliya machzik yosem mishtei zeisim. I will say the chachamim said that apparently, again, the most a person could swallow at once is the amount of 2 kizesim. So therefore, again, you could swallow 2 kizesim at once. Because of that, the Mishnah would still call that yesh ochel achila achas. So you could call the consumption of 2 kizesim 1 achila. More than that, it's already going to be multiple acts of achila. So therefore, Rabbi say, we understand either that the Mishnah is telling us that you could eat 1 thing and be chayiv 4 chatos, and again, you can't come up with a case of where nosar and pigul would be violated at the same time, or apparently alternate reading of the Mishnah has you could be a violation of 5 chatos, in which case, again, I'm not eating 1 kizayis, I'm eating 2 kizesim. The second kizayis is of pigul. Why does the Mishnah call that yesh ochel achila achos? Why does the Mishnah call that 1 act of consumption? And the answer is because you can eat 2 kizesim at once. Beautiful. Next. Rabbi Meir says that Rabbi Meir attempted to add on another prohibition, ultimately again by making it into Shabbos. If it was Shabbos and you carried the food out, you would be chayiv as well. To which the Gemara says, "V'nisni im hotzi chayiv." We'll say ultimately, why don't you just say if he took it out, he'd be chayiv? My time katanim haisa Shabbos. Why do you have to say if it was Shabbos? Amar from Zosameres Erev Otzal Shabbos, Vein Erev Otzal Yom Kippurim. To which the Gemara will say because the Gemara Rabbi Meir obviously wants to distinguish between Yom Kippur and Shabbos. That it is dafka on Shabbos where there is a din of Erev Chatzeros, Erev Tchumin, a prohibition of Hotzah, but that does not apply to Yom Kippur. As much as Yom Kippur is called what? Shabbos Shabboson. Nevertheless, the din of Hotzah doesn't apply on Shabbos. The Gemara said, Mimai, Yom Kippur, sorry. Thank you. Mimai, Dilma Yesh Erev Hotzah Yom Kippurim. Maybe that's not true. Maybe the din of Hotzah, right, of carrying, does apply Yom Kippur as well. Vachi Katan, this is what it means to say. Im Haisa Shabbos Votziu, if it was also Shabbos and he carried out the food item, Chayiv Af Mishum Shabbos, the Yom Kippurim. He is Chayiv both for Shabbos and Yom Kippur. Ela Itmar deraf from Al Hada Itmar. This Sanya. But listen to this. Vishalach biad ish iti. So we'll say by Yom Kippur. So we'll say rather again, if you want to say Rafram's statement of Erev Hotzah l'Shabbos, then Erev Hotzah l'Yom Kippurim is not going on our Mishnah, rather it's going on a separate halacha. The Brisa says as follows: the pasuk was by the Sir Azazel, right? The Sir Azazel was the goat that was thrown over the cliff. So what's the pasuk? V'shalach biad ish iti. You have to send it in the hands. Ish iti means an appointed individual. So he takes that to the Nidbar. Ish lahachshu es hazar. So we'll say ish teaches me that what? Even a non-Kohen can take the Sir Azazel. Iti, in its appointed time, afilu b'tumah. Both say is done even if the klal is in a state of tumah, v'afilu b'Shabbos, and ultimately again, even if this is done on Shabbos. So both say again, so meaning even if it's Yom Kippur is on Shabbos, and therefore again there is an isser of hotzah, you could still go ahead and take the sir la'azazel. Iti b'mezuman katoni. I'm sorry. Iti afilu b'Shabbos. Good. Amar Rafram, Zosemeres, what do you see from here? Erev Hotzah l'Shabbos and Erev Hotzah l'Yom Kippur. Well, Rafram says the fact that you need a drasha to teach you that what? That you take out this Sir La'azazel, even on Shabbos of Yom Kippur, indicates to us that on Yom Kippur itself, Hotzah would not be a problem. Therefore, what do you see? The prohibition of Hotzah of carrying an Erev Chatzeros only applies to Shabbos, doesn't apply to Yom Kippur. Which I will say is another way of saying that what? As much as Yom Kippur is called Shabbos, and it's really treated like what? Like a Yom Tiv. Like a Yom Tiv. To which the Gemara says, Mimai. So the Gemara says, I'll tell you here, Mimai, Shiny Simishtalech Tehechshir B'Yom Kippurim B'Kach, Ela Duraf from Barusi. We'll say, so it could very well be that maybe not. Maybe Simishtalech, maybe there is Erev Hotzah on Shabbos, on Yom Kippur also. And what about Sir La'azazel, that you could carry it out even without an Erev, even on Shabbos, even on Yom Kippur, which the Gemara says, you're right, that's the mandated avoda. But say, in fact, it's not such a chiddush. The same way that shchita, right, is one of the 39 malachos. Yet in the Beis HaMikdash, we shecht karbanos. So you see again that sacrificial service has the kind of exists in a construct outside of normative halacha. So even if you hold that yesh erev hotzah for Shabbos, for Yom Kippur, you would still bring the seir la'azazel because that's the avoda of the day. And therefore again, ela deraf from Barosi, rather you have to say that Rafram's statement of ein erev hotzah Yom Kippur, both say is what? Is in fact mistaken. Both say, how do we paskin? So the Shulchan Aruch and Arachayim, Hilchos Eruvei Tchumin, Simin Taf Tes Zayin, Sif Dalit writes as follows: Yom Kippurim Harehu Kishabbos. Yom Kippur is treated just like Shabbos. Bein le'inyan eruvei chatzeros, bein le'inyan eruvei tchumin. So we'll say, so again, this is the Shabbason identity of Yom Kippur that has the same halachas. Same halachas, we'll say, which is the same way, by the way, that halacha l'maisa, let's say someone has to eat on Yom Kippur, right? So what's the halacha? Can you cook on Yom Kippur? No. Yom Tov, Ochel Nefesh is permitted, and for this individual, again, who is a chola, he's allowed to eat. Again, Yom Kippur is treated like Shabbos in almost every respect. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, both in terms of Hotzah, as well as Eruvei Tchumin and Chatzeros, Yom Kippur is like Shabbos. Beautiful. Incredible Gemara, Bose. Okay, good. Let's go weiter. Bose, so if you noticed last night, I sent you out three messages on your WhatsApp. Right? Three different charts. Ultimately, again, with these Mishnayos, we are going to go through these Mishnayos quickly, and you are going to reference back to the charts for a fuller understanding of it, only because it's a little bit beyond the construct of our time to be able to get there. I'll get through whatever I can, I'll record the rest. But I will say, again, just to kind of give you a little bit of background. What we're going to do in the next couple of Mishnayos is ultimately show how one act, how how ultimately, again, one act of illicit relations could generate multiple liabilities. This is a carryover of the previous Mishnah. The previous Mishnah said that you could eat one item and what be chayiv from multiple chatos and an asham. So now we're going to see you could engage in one illicit act and be chayiv multiple times. Then of course you're going to see these cases which are a bit wild. You're going to ask yourself, why does the Gemara spend time on this? Remember, the point is we're going to see that the Gemara is trying to highlight over here is the concept of Isser Mosif and Isser Kolel. The idea that even if you hold Ein Isser Chal Al Isser, ultimately, again, even if you say that one Isser cannot pile on another, that's only when they are like Isurim. When the second Isser has either some added dimension of severity or is more inclusive than the first, then the second one can, in fact, develop upon the first. Let's go. Says the Mishnah, Yesh bia achos v'chayev aleh vav chatos. Both say there could be one bia that ultimately, again, results in 5 different chatas offerings. 6 different chatas offerings. So we'll say, so what's the case? And again, you'll see this is the first, just so you understand, this is the first chart I sent you out over here. What is it? So we'll say, Ketzad, here we go. Haba al bito, chayiv ala mishum bito, va'achoso, ve'eshes achiv, ve'eshes achi aviv, ve'eshes ish nida. Wow. So we'll say, so bottom line, not worth it, right? Just that's the take-home message, right? So we'll say, no matter how much Yetzer Hara a person has, right? So now this is actually a little bit of a this is a crazy case. Look at Rashi. Bito v'achoso. The case of Rabosai is sheba al imo v'holida. This is a case that begins with incest. A case that begins with incest and kind of spirals out of control from there. So you could see, I gave you not just the chart, but I also gave you the background. So again, looking on the first diagram I sent you can see it's note 44. We could just look at it in here. The sinner, whom we shall call Ruvain, previously had an ancestral relationship with his mother, Leah, from which a daughter, Dinah, was born. Dinah married Ruvain's paternal half-brother. Since Dinah and Shimon are not siblings, having neither the same father nor mother, their marriage is valid. After Shimon died, Dinah married Ruvain's father's brother, Esav, appropriately named. Reuven then committed incest with Dinah when she was a Nida. Family gatherings are awkward. Let's just put it at that. So both sides. So this is the case over here. And again, you can see the chart. The chart actually makes it easier. I guess it makes it easier. Right? So both sides. So the point over here is that halacha l'maisa, one woman, right, and all of these prohibitions. Amud Beis. Let's say Rabbi Meir Isser Chalal Isser. But 1 second, Rabbi Meir doesn't hold of Isser Chalal Isser. Nihi de Isser Chalal Isser less, like Isser Mosif Isser Kolal Isser. We'll say, here's the point. Even though again, ain't Isser Chalal Isser, that's true again, we'll say with like lateral Isurim. But when it's Isser Mosif Isser Kolal, it will add on. What's the Isser Mosif Isser Kol over here? Here we go. Kigon Shebal Imo V'holid Ba. So we'll say, so this case begins with a man who engages in incest with his mother, and ultimately, again, that union creates a daughter. The Isser Bito V'achoso Bahadi Hadadi Asin. I will say, now that girl that the man fathers with his mother is both his daughter and his sister. Then I will say, now those prohibitions devolve simultaneously, right? Those happen at the same time. That's not a din of Isser Chalal Isser, right? They both occur the moment that girl is born. She is both, we'll call him Ruvain. She's both Ruvain's daughter. Come on. Right? She's both. Still 3 minutes. Right? So I'll say, so ultimately, again, there's both, ultimately what? There's both the prohibition of daughter and sister at the same time. Next, Niseis La'achiv, if that girl then goes ahead, Yudalam Base 5 lines down. Niseis La'achiv, if she then, that girl, that union, then marries, right, his brother. Now remember, who his being her father slash brother's brother. Good. Look on the chart. So we'll say, what's the halacha? Migo di tosif isra l'gabe ach. And I will say, now remember, once she marries her father slash brother, then halacha l'maisa, she now becomes prohibited to her husband's other brothers. There's a new Isser here. Once there's a new Isser there, itosif l'gabe didei. Ultimately, again, that Isser devolves upon her father, brother as well. Niseis la'achiav, if that husband dies, and then she marries one of her father's brothers, right, la'achiaviv, migo di itosif la'achi aviv, to the brother of her father, migo di tosif yisur legabi shar achin aviv, itosif legabi didei. Since ultimately, again, in that case, since there's a new prohibition generated vis-a-vis the father's brothers, ultimately, again, there's a new isser generated vis-a-vis him as well. Havile eshes ish, she now becomes an eshes ish. Migo di tosif isur legabi amar, we'll say when she becomes a married woman, there's an additional isser that is generated for the rest of the world. See, tosif nami legabi didei. Therefore, that additional prohibition will now devolve additionally upon her father/brother. Havile nida. Once she becomes a nida, migo di tosif isra legabi baila, itosif nami legabi didei. Once she becomes a nida, so since that prohibition devolves upon her husband, it will devolve upon the original man as well. So therefore, again, this entire construct really just to highlight this concept. I want to be clear. If you hold Isser Halal Isser, this whole discussion is not really such a chiddush because you're even holding one Isser. But if you hold, like Rabbi Meir, that Ein Isser Halal Isser, the point we're trying to highlight over here is even though it's Ein Isser Halal Isser, Isser Mosef and Isser Kol Halal Isser. We'll say next case, real quickly. Haba Abbas Bito. Now, we'll say this is again in the WhatsApp. This was the second diagram that I sent you. The second diagram that I send you. So again, you'll reference the diagram. Haba Abbas Bito. So we'll say this is the case over here of where a man has relations with the daughter of his daughter. So Rashi says Bas Bito v'kalaso, Shani says Shanasa bino. So we'll say in this case over here, sorry, not yet. So we'll say so he has relations with his granddaughter. Chayav ala mishum Bas Bito. And then again, assuming this girl also married his son, Vikalaso, and also potentially as a result of his daughter-in-law, Ve'esha es achiv, and the wife of his brother, Ve'esha es achi aviv, and the wife of the brothers of his father, Va'achos ishto, and his wife's sister, V'isha nida, Ve'esha ish, and a married woman, V'nida, and if she's a nida, Rabbi Yossi Omer im avar zakin v'nasaf, the great grandfather went ahead and married this girl, Chayav ala mishum eshes av. Then ultimately again, if then the great grandfather's son had relations with her, then ultimately again he would the son of the great grandfather would also be chayav for violating his or for having relations with his father's wife. V'china abba abbas ishto va'al bas bita, and so to one who also has relations with the daughter of his wife, and ultimately, again, the daughter of his daughter. So we'll say, see the chart. The chart will spell out this entire case. Katani, we'll say just quickly, Katani chayiv ala mishum eshesav. So ultimately, again, the Mishnah said that he would be chayiv for her because of eshesav. But one second, mishariele, we'll say to say that he would be chayiv for her because of eshesav. Under what circumstances would this girl ever be permitted to this man? It's ultimately what's the case? The case of halacha l'maisa, there was a yibum situation. If that's the case again, then halacha l'maisa, what's the prohibition? Shnia. We'll say the case over here that we're setting it up is as where, although she fell to him for yibum, ultimately, again, she is considered to be the daughter-in-law of his son, which is considered to be a shnia. We'll say the daughter-in-law of your son is not one of the direct arayos, but rather it's what we call a sheni la'arayos. Kedisanya, kalaso erva, your own daughter-in-law is an erva. Kalas bino shnia, the daughter-in-law of your son is what's called a shnia. V'china tamotzi bebas bino ubebas ben bino at sof kaladoros. And I will say you see that this shnia le'erva extends all the way down the generations, including ultimately again the daughter of your son, the granddaughter of your son, at sof kaladoros. Umi isra Rabbi Yossi isra chalal isra. Rabbi says Rabbi Yossi actually hold of the concept of isra chalal isra. V'hatnan, but we learned avar avera shish b'shtei misos. We'll say if a person violated an avera that has 2 death penalties associated with it, nidon bechamura, he is judged according to the more severe of the 2. Rabbi Yossi Omer, nidon bezeka rishona. Rabbi Yossi is not a question of severity. We look at which isser was there first. For example, bezeka rishon shbala v'tanya, keitzan Rabbi Yossi nidon bezeka rishona. What's the example of Rabbi Yossi saying that you're judged according to the first prohibition that was there? For example, chamoso v'nasa eshesish. We'll say, let's say a woman is your mother-in-law, and then she marries someone. So she was first your mother-in-law, became prohibited to you as your mother-in-law, and then what happens? Then becomes an Eshes Ish, and a man has relations with his mother-in-law. So we'll say, so what is he chayiv for? Is he chayiv for mother-in-law, or is he chayiv for a married woman? Nidon mishum chamoso. Rabbi Yossi says he's chayiv ultimately again for mother-in-law. Because why? Because that was there first. Nida mishum chamoso. Eishes ish v'nasa chamos. What happens if a woman was a married woman and then only afterwards she becomes his mother-in-law and he has relations with her? Nida mishum eishes ish. Ultimately, again, he is held accountable. Why? For relations with a married woman. Rabbi Avo. So we'll say, so you see that Rabbi Yossi doesn't hold of Isser Chalal Isser. So Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Avo, be Isser Mosif. We'll say this is the whole punchline of these sugyas. Even Rabbi Meir, who holds Ein Isser Chal Al Isser, even Rabbi Yossi holds Ein Isser Chal Al Isser, will agree with what? Isser Mosif. Will agree when the secondary Isser adds on a dimension of prohibition or includes more people in a prohibition than the first. Even Rabbi Yossi will agree that the second Isser devolves. So the Gemara says, V'chein kias Rabbi Yochanan, Bod Rabbi Yossi be Isser Mosif. Rabbi Yossi agrees in the case of Isser Mosif. My Isser Mosif ikahacha. Both say, what's the case of Isser Mosif that applies over here? Very simply, Bira, the Gemara says, Amigo di, I'm sorry, my Isser Mosif ikahacha, di ika bra l'saba. Both say the cases where the great-grandfather in this case has a son. Migo di tosef isur legabe brei, itosef isur legabe dide. Since both say vis-a-vis the great-grandfather, once the great-grandfather has a son, and in some of these relationships there's an additional dimension of Isser added towards the son, that additional layer of Isser devolves upon the great-grandfather as well. All right, to both sides. I apologize for the speed of that last case, that last Mishnah, but you'll see, I dafka put it out on the WhatsApp, you'll see on the table a little explanation, it all comes together.